I just want to open up some thoughts about, what is Christhood? What is it to express Christhood? And there's no way that it can be encapsulated in a single video that I want to share. And there's no way it can be summed up in a list of, qualities, because it's just beyond. It is beyond. It's beyond this world. It's beyond our linear minds. So how can the Christ be put into a box where it all just like, there we go, this is what Christhood is, and pack it all away and it all looks really neat there. Yeah. So everything I'm talking about, and whenever I come to a video of talking about Christhood, it's just aspects and thoughts and contemplations on what it is and what it is not. Because, when you go on the spiritual path, I think what you end up discovering, it's not about it's like this constant letting go of who you are not, like just working out like, but that's not me, that's not who I am, or that, that belief or that identity, that's holding me back. It's putting a limitation on the full expression of who I am. Like how I used to identify as homosexual, and it's a limit, It is a total limit, because, to be honest, I'm not interested in a relationship, but that's kind of beside the point. The point is that I was aware, as I was, and it was quite a natural progression for me to experience that. But I realised, there was some men who came along who I found attractive and everything, but I never pursued any long-term relationships, sometimes sexual, but I just sort of felt like, no, but I'm homosexual, so, I can't do that. It was a limit. And that's just a single example. And so and it was a really big part of me really stepping up on my path, was actually totally questioning that identity, like just realizing like this is an illusion. So, Christhood. So, I think, the best place to start is to look at Jesus, for the obvious reasons, as he's known as Jesus Christ, and he taught about Christhood, and he's known worldwide as being a being who definitely embodied Christhood. And, and what religion has done is it's just taken over the story and placed like an image of what Christhood is, and an image of who Jesus was and is. And I've noticed that when I've talked about Jesus sometimes, that people will say that Jesus never changes, and wow. Again, that's just such a worldly limit, saying, Jesus is this, and then that's all Jesus will be, that's all Jesus will ever be. And it's just so limiting, because, and if we're placing a limit like that on Jesus, then we're placing a limit like that on ourselves, saying, this is all I can ever be, a mortal human being or whatever it might be. And even people who are open to, Jesus as a being, as a spirit who's continued to live on and to interact with us, and there's still a lot of, there's still like, placing this box upon, who the Christ is, through Jesus. So I think it would be fair to say that, a lot of people hold on to certain images, be it like, Jesus was like the Prince of Peace, People who believe in, like, standing up for your rights sort of thing, like, they'll hold on to the image of Jesus as the one who turned over the tables and so on. And again, like, there's these constant images of who people thought Jesus was. And the reality is that if they met Jesus in the flesh, they likely would have rejected him, because the Christ does not conform to any mental box. The Christ speaks through us and expresses through us, and it is designed to give both either the self or somebody else an opportunity to just, step up from wherever they or we are at. So when we rise in consciousness, it's the Christ that's helping us to rise in consciousness. And that's often known as, like, the great aha moment. When you're just like, all right, and it all, everything just drops into place. That's the Christ. It's beyond the analytical mind. The analytical mind can't do it, Like, I work so hard resolving selves, and I do all the work and the focus, and but I just know, like, that thinking about it and trying to understand it, that will only take me so far. Then I just have to surrender and just wait for that opening, when obviously it's when I drop away, when whatever, is holding me back from understanding. And then, it's just like the Christ descends, and I just have this awakening of, like, I see. And it's just, the burden just drops away. And this is, I know you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's so that's how it is for us as an individual, and how the Christ can work for us. And then the Christ working through us. So the Christ can work through anyone or anything at any level. So the Christ can come through a being that's, like, technically at a very, very low state of consciousness. They actually probably wouldn't even be aware that, this is the Christ coming with a challenge to help rise up to the next level in consciousness. The Christ can work through fallen beings even, because the Christ is in everything. God is in everything. Christ is in everything. So, I could take, like, I wasn't hoping to go in this direction, but, I could take, like, a dreadful example, even just putting the word dreadful there, an example of, let's say, a murder being committed. And, you could say, well, how is the Christ there? And the Christ is not in the murder, but the Christ is in what you can learn from this. What can the people learn from this? Are they going to go into the fear spiral of blame, shame, anger, whatever it might be? Or is there a higher lesson to learn from this? I'm not going to say what that lesson could possibly be, but there is a lesson in everything that comes along, no matter how difficult it is. There is a lesson. And that lesson comes through the Christ. I feel that I don't want to go any further right now, because I don't want to go into, trying to qualify what Christic expression is. But needless to say that, it can change. It's not the Christ is not a preconceived thing. And also, a Christic expression one day If that same action was repeated the next day, most likely wouldn't be a Christic expression. It's just a self taking over and trying to be the Christ, you know. So the Christ is sort of just can't be put into a box. I remember reading just a lovely explanation. I think it was Jesus said, like, the Christ is like a herd of wild horses, you know, and they run into town, into the middle of everything, and all the dust gets stirred up and everything, and then as quickly as they've ridden in, they're gone again. But the dust, you know, you just watch as the dust, you know, slowly takes its time to settle. So, look, I know with me, something I've learned, like in the past, the Christ would work through me in a way where, you know, I'd be like those wild horses and stir things up. But I've hit a point now of realizing that, you know, something came in, a separate self came in and took over that. So that then, you know, I thought it was the Christ, but it wasn't. It was some kind of spiritual sense of self. So it changes, you know. We can't hold ourselves into a mental box of how the Christ is going to work through us either. All right. Enough for today.